Okay, good afternoon. I'm Byron Ham. I'm the program manager and assistant manager with ProCert Organic Systems. If you didn't tell from my question earlier, I'm involved in the certification aspect of things. ProCert has been involved in the certification sector in Canada since 1990. We have offices in both Saskatoon and now most recently in historic Lindsay, Ontario. We've moved our Eastern Regional Office into the central hub of historic downtown Lindsay. Our program is based around providing a diverse solution of certification programs to organic operators, whether it be for organic agriculture, aquaculture, health and body care products, whatever you're looking at from an organic point of view, we're looking to provide you a certification option for it. Our primary programs are the Canada Organic Regime and the USDA National Organic Program, but we're also the only Canadian owned and operated certifier offering regenerative organic certification in Canada. So with that, just a little bit about ProCert. I'm actually happy to introduce Chris Anderson with our next session, Shaping the Market with Innovative Policies, Insights from the US. Chris is a lifelong organic foods advocate, learning from his family's experience operating an organic farm, whose business grew into an iconic American organic food brand. As Vice President of Sustainable Strategies and Senior Advisor to the Organic Trade Association, he routinely advises world governments and corporations on navigating global organic standards to expand international trade opportunities. Chris has worked on equivalency arrangements and the expansion of international organic trade, representing the organic industry in numerous engagements. So please help me in welcoming Chris Anderson.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Tia and Coda for inviting me up here. It's my first time in Ottawa. I very much appreciated the snowy welcome yesterday, so thank you very much. And I wanted to just to start with a little more introduction about sustainable strategies and what we do. I literally grew up on the organic farm. My grandfather started an organic farm in 1946 in the US. It was the first vertically integrated organic farm in the country. He met J.I. Rodale in those little towns in Pennsylvania, in Phoenixville. And my grandfather was a prolific naturalist writer, kind of Walt Whitman-y. And J.I. actually made him an offer to be the original editor for Organic Gardening, and I wonder how different our lives would have been had that happened. We ended up growing 600 acres of organic fruits and vegetables. In the U.S., we were vertically integrated, so we grew the vegetables, we canned them on our farm, we grew the grains, we milled them on the farm, we made them into baked goods, froze them, and distributed them around the country and around the world for many years. So that brand, Walnut Acres Organic Farm, continues to this day as part of Hain Celestial, and we're really, really proud of that brand. Our work in policy, and that's what my father and I do now at Sustainable Strategies, really began at a very early age. Back in the 70s, we were growing and producing organic peanut butter. So we were taking peanuts, we were roasting them, and then we ground them and we put them in a jar. It's pretty radical. We had to sell that in the US as imitation peanut butter because it didn't meet the federal rec for what had to be in peanut butter. We didn't have hydrogenated oil in there. We didn't have salt. We didn't have sugar. So we had to sell that as imitation peanut butter. We grew organic cattle and we created hot dogs. But we weren't allowed to sell them as hot dogs because they didn't have nitrites and nitrates. So we had to sell them as imitation Frankfurters. So that's really what kind of started our policy work and our advocacy. My grandfather started that. My father continued that, being president of the NOSB, the National Organic Standards Board, which we'll talk about later, during the creation of the organic rule. And now we continue that work, working with OTA, the USDA, and the National Organic Program on equivalency arrangements around the world. We do all of that really, really exciting, sexy background technical analysis. So anytime you need something to put you to sleep, call me. I've got a presentation for that too. So we also help companies, small and large, get into the organic industry, and we deal with a lot of crisis management in terms of organic trade. So just I guess I did the same thing everybody else does. There we go. Let's see. All right. So just a quick update on the US market, just for perspective. So amid the inflation and supply chain challenges, the US market did manage a 4% growth last year. That's the first time that organic foods reached 60 billion in the US. So a huge marker there for us. And I really wanted to point out historically, in 1990, when the Organic Food Production Act was passed, the US organic sales were only $1 billion. By the time 2020 rolled around and the rule was announced, it was already $6 billion. By 2020 or 2013, $30 billion. In 2017, Kroger, who is our version of Loblaws for you, they announced that they had $1 billion in organic produce sales that year. And that same year, Amazon bought Whole Foods for $13 billion. So the growth has been tremendous overall. We all know the COVID impact on 2020, where everybody, or 21, where everybody bought much more organics. And so if you just continue to look at this on a trend, it's really a very nice, consistent trend line. Just wanted to talk a little bit about non-food in here. It's mostly supplements, supplements and fiber. We are still working on a pet food standard, so we expect that to rise very quickly. But it's interesting that this is for the first time really starting to grow up, just below 6 billion. So our organic sales continue to be up, but our penetrations have slowed a little bit. So in some of our biggest categories, fruits and vegetables, we're at about 15% organic in the US, 8% in dairy and eggs. And when we saw the impressive numbers that Paul put up, we've got a lot of work to do. In the US, we are the biggest market for organic foods at over 60 billion, but less than 1% of our cropland is organically certified. So we're going to talk a little bit about policy now. So the U.S. Farm Bill. So what is it? So all of U.S. agriculture is driven by the Farm Bill. It gets renegotiated every 5 years, and it's a huge omnibus bill. It's almost $500 million in spending. So where does that go? So the large majority of that, $325 billion from the last Farm Bill, goes to supplemental nutrition assistance. It's our SNAP program, food stamps, things that help folks who are economically challenged or nutritionally challenged. It also, though, funds the National Organic Program, our organic cost share initiatives, the organic transition research, and market access programs. So the NOP last year received $20 million from the Farm Bill to oversee what is now a $60 billion industry. So obviously that's a nice starting point. We've asked for that to move up to 25 million in the new program. The Organic Cost Share Initiative is another really important feature in the Farm Bill that provides $750 to offset certification costs for every farmer. Again, that's something we've asked to double over the year. $7 million for organic transition research, really gathering information and sharing the information about how it is easy to transition into organics. And then the market access program. MAP really gives, it's a great program to push American products into other markets. And we're grateful. The NOP is grateful. We get grateful, and OTA. We get $1 million a year from the federal government to promote US organic products around the world, which sounds like a good amount of money until you start looking at the EU. In the EU, they're using about 30 million euros around the world, and $1 million alone in Vietnam this year. So there's a little bit of a disparity there. So let's talk a little bit about the history of the farm bills and why they're so important. So the 1990 Farm Bill created the Organic Foods Production Act. And what's super important about it is that the Farm Bill not only created it. In the US, we have a real tendency in the legislature to create a committee or to create a really good idea and then not fund it. So what OFPA did was actually funded the Organic Production Act. It funded the NOP from the beginning. In 2002, In 2000, it took us 10 years. So in 2000 was finally when the NOP rolled out, and the NOSB did all their recommendations. We did a ton of work. Took 10 years to get it to roll out. In 2002, we got more information. In 2014, we funded the Organic Integrity Database. So in the US, you can go to USDA Organic Integrity Database. You can type in the name of anybody in the value chain, and you can pull up their certificate. Right online, you have a picture of it. It's a PDF, and you're ready to roll. So you can really ensure the integrity of the certificates that you're getting. In the 2018 Farm Bill, we got the money for the Strengthening of Organic Enforcement Act, which I hear is kind of popular up here, and baseline funding for research. It took us till this year to actually get that, to get SOE through the channels, but we got the money for it in 2018 and had to do it. So what are we asking for in 2023, 2024? We're asking that the funding for NOP go up 10% every year to keep up with the growth in the industry. And we're asking for up to $5 million a year for NOP to develop their own technologies, including import certificates, to keep up with the data reporting and collection that we need to do. We're also asking for an every 5-year at a minimum update to the Organic Food Production Act. So similar to the system that you have, ours doesn't necessarily update on a routine basis. So why did OFPA and the NOP come into existence? I don't think that this is any surprise for anybody in this room. It was really just to create a national standard. Pre-OFPA, pre-NOP, it was really the Wild West where, what we were certifying at my farm in Walnut Acres was potentially very different from what was being certified just down the road by Rodale, what was happening in California or Oregon or Oklahoma. So it really created a national standard. And at that point, trust in organic was really fraying in the US. Even though it was a billion-dollar industry and it was nascent, it was still fraying because people weren't really believing in it. So it assured customer trust. It created a national accreditation system for the certifiers, which is huge. We codified what the labeling requirements for organics were going to be, and then set up the mechanism for international organic trade agreements. So all really positive things. So before I heard the last presentation, I was thinking this was a really big wins for us. But I guess know your audience a little bit. So for us, strengthening of organic enforcement is something that we have been asking for a very, very long time. And that's really and we really feel that SOE and OLPS, the Organic Livestock Production Standards, they are really bringing the US closer to all of our organic trading partners, whether that's Canadians or the EU or other places around the world. We're really closing the gaps in the organic supply chain that exists. So certification now exists. You have to be certified all along the value chain. So brokers, importers, exporters, folks who didn't have to be certified in the past. And yes, the guidance from inside the US, the guidance is if you wonder if you should be certified, you should be certified. It also includes fraud control plans. So fraud control plans are now part of the your organic system plan. So everybody in the US is rushing toward that March deadline as well, updating their OSPs, whether you're in crops or whether you're a processor or both, to create a fraud prevention plan and ensure the organic integrity of what you're doing and doing your part inside that value chain. And then organic import certificates, which I hear are pretty popular. So I don't have any more information on that than you do, other than that I know that they are piloting it and that we're supposed to have more information in the fall, which it was snowing yesterday, so I'm pretty sure we're near the end of the fall. So origin of the Organic Livestock Standards, those really, again, those bring us much more in line with the rest of the world on indoor and outdoor space requirements and production practices relating to healthcare, relating to transportation, to slaughtering of livestock. But I want to caution you, those are our two big wins this year, and those are big wins. It doesn't always come quickly, certainly not in the US. So those were both recommendations that NOSB made 21 years ago that we have been pushing for, right? So it takes continued engagement. It takes continued advocacy. It takes continued pushing forward your agenda politically. And you have to wait for the right time. We are in a great time with our administration where they really supported these changes and we were able to push them through. You know, occasionally, I mean, we had to sue the USDA to get SOE to go through. So there are occasionally it takes a few lawyers as well. You have to have the political will to do it. We're still waiting for mushroom production. We've had those rules out for 22 years and they still haven't been adopted. Aquaculture, 16 years ago, the recommendation was made, and we're falling behind in the world there. So just wanted to let you know that it doesn't, even though it looks good, that what we did this year, it didn't come quickly. All right. So one of the other things that did happen this year that's really exciting is our transition to organic partnership program. And what this really did was it broke up the U.S. into several distinct districts, 6 of them around the country. Each of the largest not-for-profit certifiers in each area is the they're organizing each of those agencies. So in the Mid-Atlantic, PCO, Pennsylvania Certified Organic, is the lead agency for that. And they're given, each of these entities is given $100 million over a 5-year period to help transition agriculture. And part of the reason that we're doing that is that we really are seeing a decline in the amount of farms that are transitioning to organic. I think that the realization is that the amount of big farms that are going to convert is probably stopping, right? Older farmers are a much older generation in the US. They're not going to adopt new ways. And as those farms get sold and or broken up, then they're going to smaller farms, which are predominantly organic, especially for female and indigenous and people of color farmers are accepting organic and taking it much quicker. So there's a lot that's going on inside of TOP, which is exciting. So what does it do? TOP is it provides funding for farmer-to-farmer mentoring, for community building, technical assistance and training, data collection, and then developing the workforce. So there's money for all of those things throughout all of it. In addition, it's providing a couple $100 million to go in and try to build up the infrastructure for processing and organics where it just doesn't exist, right? So whether that's building smaller slaughtering facilities or smaller mills in communities that are really helped by organic. And one of the ways that we've gotten that message across is the Organic Trade Association published a report many years ago, but it continues to have resonance, where we showed organic hotspots and how when you have a community where there are multiple organic farms, processors, and an ecosystem of organics, it actually lowers poverty rates in that community more than any of the federal programs for poverty mitigation. It's 150 basis points of poverty mitigation. So if you had a 5% poverty rate, it takes it all the way down to 3.5. So it's really an impactful program. Organics really are the future for that. So some of the other ways that we have done things. So our Organic Week, very much like your Organic Week here, lots and lots of information sharing. So last year in Washington, D.C., we had our Confluences Conference, where we really addressed plastics and the issue of plastics in the organic supply chain. And we brought together not just organic people, but people from USDA, people from the Foreign Ag Service, people from the farm bureaus, even people from the places where you wouldn't expect them to want to come in. The bag salad people came in to talk about what they were doing. Driscoll's came in to talk about what they were doing. And it really is impactful to bring together those government agencies and let them see how we're dealing with those issues. As a result of that, We had a gentleman who has now put us in contact with a whole bunch of other entities and other funding mechanisms so that we can explore packaging and the changes to packaging around the world. The EU is leading the way in reducing packaging and what has to go into their packaging. And now organics has a seat at that table. So it's about getting your voice out there with everybody. So at Organic Week, the Hill visits and our visitors, we were lucky enough to have Secretary Vilsack, our Secretary of Agriculture, showed up at our annual meeting just to announce a $75 million in competitive grants to fund projects to expand the markets for domestically produced organic products. So it was great to have him pop into it. And then we visited the Hill, no different than what you're going to do tomorrow. You go up in your lobby. This is G.T. Thompson. G.T. is a very influential Pennsylvania House of Representatives member. He is very staunchly Republican, but a huge supporter of organics. And so we go in to see G.T. all the time. It's actually my dad's right here. My dad saying hi. But we go in and not only speak about organics, but we talk about the impact of organics right down to his district level. So everybody goes in there, and we know when we walk into GT's office, it's not going to be an easy sell, but you tell him that his state is the 4th in the US with 1,600 organic businesses. He's 3rd in farm gate sales at $1 billion. So that's over 10% of the US's farm gate organic sales. That the state of Pennsylvania got $20 million in research funds from the federal government. You tell him what are the #1 products, and then you drill right down to his home district and say, you know what, in your home district, it's 438 organic operations right there. And that gets people's attention, right? So it's all about, everybody knows that we're talking about Congress, we're talking about big groups, but all politics is local. The other thing that we do as part of the OTA, before I get to this slide, is the Organic PAC. So we are a political action committee. We have a political action committee. It's all funded by personal donations to it. And it's not a lot of money. You know, we're giving congressmen and senators $500 or $1,000 for their campaign, but we get a seat at the table. We get a seat at the table, and it's really important. So public-private partnerships. So USDA, the Organic Trade Association, and Sustainable, we work really well together in public-private partnerships, and that's how we build relationships inside the government. So USDA, NOP, they don't have the resources to do the technical background work. They don't, nor do they have the expertise, quite frankly, to do all of that. So they rely on industry. They rely on folks like the Trade Association, like Sustainable, to help them through that process, and we're happy to help with that. And then we build relationships with OTA at trade shows around the world. So this is us in BioPHOC with Secretary Tucker, Undersecretary Tucker, talking about organics around the US, around the world, and promoting US goods around the world. And it's just so important and so impactful to have those conversations with the people in the room who really matter. Right. So it's fantastic that you've got Valeria here. It's just as important to get out there and get Valeria to BioPHOC so that Valeria can have the meetings with Secretary Tucker so that everybody can get together on the same page. It's super important, and it's super important for them to see the industry and how cohesive the industry is in the messages. All right. So NOSB, the National Organic Standards Board, I just think it's important to understand what NOSB does and why it's so important. It really is a volunteer board. They meet twice a year to make recommendations to the NOP and to USDA. And what's super important about NOSB is that NOSB is the only organization that can take something off the organic list, right? So the secretary can take it off if there's a health concern, if there's a matter of public health, yes, they can take it off, but they can't just take it off because conventional says that product has to come off. So it's really phenomenal how much power the industry and all of the folks in NOSB have to really create consensus and to manage the national list part of it especially. And I forgot to make one really, really important point a couple slides ago when I was talking about TOP and those big numbers that are being funded out there for TOP, the transition to organic partnerships. That money was left over from the American Rescue Act, a COVID related stimulus plan. And the Biden administration moved that money over into USDA to promote organics. So that money had been allocated. It wasn't being spent for the things that it was supposed to be, that it was originally set for, and they were able to move it in. So Climate Smart, similarly, Climate Smart has grown up like that. So we've got $3 billion for climate smart agriculture, and we're really. Hey, I'm back. Thank you for waiting. So USDA gave $3 billion for climate smart projects around the entire country. And so we're out there trying to prove that organic really is climate smart, which is a no-brainer for everybody in this room, but is news to a lot of folks in Washington. So I think that what's really important is that there was a lot of money out there. It was for all of the entire agricultural society, but we did get a lot of really important initiatives in there. Our friends at Rodale are leading a very large piece of that research. Our friends at Crop from Organic Valley have another huge project, and lots of other organizations are really benefiting. So hugely important to the industry. So some of the other things that are out there that the US does. So IOIA, the International Organic Inspectors Association, this is super important. IOIA helps create, does inspector training and building human capital capacities, right? It really helps standardize and create inspectors. We all know that the industry keeps growing and there's a lack of inspectors. So IOIA has really taken that on and really helps build that inspector capacity. And then the ACAs, our Accredited Certifier Association, that's super important because it really helps make sure that the recommendations are all consistent amongst our certifiers, so that what PCO says isn't different from what EcoCert says, isn't different from what TILT says in different parts of the country. It's really, really important. And it all goes back to building trust in the trade. So I wanted to talk, Valeria, this one's for you. So we're going to talk about international trade and equivalency arrangements, and then we'll have a little some time for Q&A as well. So I think that it's important to bring up this slide, the camel. And the reason is that organics, in many cases, especially in international trade, the organics can be the camel's nose in the tent. And what that means is that it is a very innocent issue. People want to talk about organics. There's a huge demand for organics around the world. And it's easier for our governments sometimes to talk about organics before they have to deal with other stickier issues inside agriculture and inside trade. So organics can really be that wedge that starts to open up the dialogue between different countries. So organics as the camel's nose in the tent. So organic equivalency arrangements, I haven't updated this because you all keep signing arrangements quicker than my graphic designers can do it. So they're now 41. And congratulations. Congratulations on the Korea one. Korea is a small market. It is a challenging market, but it is a lucrative market. So congratulations to getting that arrangement. You're gonna have a lot to deal with, but it is really, really a great place to be. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit more. All right, so really just real quickly, what are they, right? So equivalency arrangements are not the same, right? Our system is not exactly the same as your system, but they are comparable, they are verifiable, and they ensure organic integrity. So they are the building blocks of organic trade. So why do they matter? Well, because they do expand global trade, they reduce trade barriers, and they decrease the cost of us having to be certified to multiple standards. Trade between the US and Canada would come to a screeching halt if we had to all be certified to both standards in order to trade just across our border. So how do we get there? So it all starts with a side-by-side comparison. Again, that's going back to all the really fun work we do line by line, going through each regulation, finding the equivalent regulation in the other country and saying, is this really an issue for organic integrity, or is it something that we need to call out and work through? There are tons and tons of meetings and discussions. There are on-site assessments. So, the NOP has been, after COVID, the NOP team has been traveling like a rock band on tour. They've been all over the world. Recently, we just had Korea and the EU in for peer reviews. So it's been very, very busy. And then it's not just a one and done, right? There's continuous monitoring. There's continuous reviews, as we've talked about. So why do we do them, right? We've talked about what they do and why they do it. We did a study, OTA did a study where it increases organic exports by 58% in the US. It increases imports into the US by 110%. And if you really want to dig into this, my friend, the agroeconomist, you should download this. It's fascinating. And at first glance, you look at this and you're like, well, why the heck would the US do it if all it's doing is building up imports? And the real reason is that a lot of those imports go into our further processed goods, which then get re-exported out. So it does make a ton of sense. So that brings us to this one. Our arrangement with Canada is working. And why is it working? Because there are clear certification standards on both sides. We've got strong enforcement and control bodies on both sides. And our industries are clearly aligned that this is what we want to do, that we want to continue to have trade across the border. So in the current arrangement, there are critical variances, right? We disagree over some pretty big things. So the Canadian market, we can't export things that include sodium nitrite. I think that one is potentially, we can partially at least mitigate that one in the next one. Hydroponics, we allow hydroponics, you don't, that's okay. And your livestock stocking rates, I think that OLPS is going to really mitigate some of that in the discussions. In the US, we stand really firmly on producing organic products, organic livestock products without antibiotics. That one's probably not going to go away. Your hydroponics isn't going to go away. We're going to happily shake hands and continue to move on and continue to facilitate trade. I think that it's important to say that the revisions that both countries have undergone make these talks challenging, right? So SOE and OLPS should be in there as well. And then your 2020 organic program updates, and then anything that you can share on what's going to happen in 2025 will really be impactful. But why do we want to do it? Well, Canada is 44% of our organic exports, right? So it's incredibly important to the US marketplace. So we know about those challenges, but who really wins? Everybody wins with these organic equivalency arrangements. The consumers, the farmers, our soils, our environment, and our livestock. They all benefit. So I just wanted to go through and talk about this real quickly. Who are our top export markets? South Korea is number 5. It's a tiny country, but it's our 5th largest market. Obviously, if the EU were pushed all together, it'd be in this range as well. But what's important is that all of those ones with the asterisk, those have got an organic equivalency arrangement with the US. And we've talked with Mexico repeatedly. So they do work and they really do impact trade. So just specifically, our exports to you, no surprises here. A lot of things that don't grow real well here in Canada. All year round, right. Canada is a huge import market for the US, right? And what are we importing from you? Again, there are no real surprises here. It's a lot of those grain products that really help drive our process industry, our livestock industry, et cetera. Yeah. Okay. So there you have it. So questions.